Time now for the voice of the land on the Big Play Network with your hosts, Kevin Arnold and Always Positive Jay.
Do have to go back down and talk about the upcoming NFL hearing for Deshaun Watson on what the length of the suspension could be. There's a lot of reports out there, and Jay, I know that you had kind of sent me some tweets from Mark Maskey, who had kind of explained the disciplinary process for how everything works.
It's very straightforward and very easy to understand the whole thing.
Yeah, and I know people have gotten kind of confused by it, and there's fans that are kind of got the blinders on. They just think, oh, it's only going to be 4 games. We got Deshaun Watson. We got a much better quarterback than we had last year. Everything's all good. The NFL wants to make an example. If you believe in all the reports, and it's when there's smoke, there's fire. They want to make an example out of Deshaun Watson, a possible indefinite suspension that it goes at least for 1 year.
Or they want it to be heard that they want it that way. Got to look at it that way.
Yeah, they want to protect the shield, basically protect the whatever power they think that shield still holds.
So they're saying one thing knowing what's going to happen. So it's looking good for them. Like, oh, we wanted this, but we didn't get our way.
And somehow reports will, if it doesn't go their way, reports will get out there that it wasn't on them.
Because we know what they really care about. Money, and that's it.
What goes on at the offices in the NFL, in New York, and whatever. In sports, we know that there's a lot of stuff that's pretty shady. There's curtains. There's curtains upon curtains upon curtains covering up a lot of different stuff in sports. I'm not trying to make allegations against everybody. We just know, like, we don't always get the full story, and even when stories break, there's other reports that downplay what that person said or what that reporter tried to say. Like, there's discrediting of the media too.
Or there's settlements, and we don't hear the story at all.
It's a lot of hearsay, and I don't feel like we ever get the full story. And we can keep asking for it. We can keep asking these coaches and GMs to give us exactly what their plan is for the draft or what the NFL is going to do in these type of circumstances with suspensions. You're always going to get that say a lot by not saying anything. So, I don't know why we keep begging for it, because it doesn't seem to work.
I asked someone that once, and I won't know names, and I'm like, why do you even bother asking the questions knowing that they're not going to give you an answer? And they're just like, we have to. It's literally, we have to. We know it's going to happen, the answer, but they have to. So
it's their job, because even if the person doesn't say anything, it's how they say it that you kind of know, and then
or sometimes just what they don't say is what they're saying.
And there's great reporters out there that do get pieces of the story that are necessary to know and for people to understand when they only think one way or the other. And again, I'll remind everyone before we get into suspension stuff, if you disagree, doesn't mean that person is a bad person. That's where conversations have really gone off the rails. But speaking of this suspension, hearing on Tuesday, you kind of looked at the NFL process for how the discipline will come down. Just from your understanding of that,
basically,
what do you feel right now, Jay?
Well, what the process is going to be is it Judge Sue Robinson?
Yeah.
And once she hears it and if she decides that if he is going against the personal conduct policy, then she'll give out her discipline, and either the NFL or the NFLPA can appeal that to Roger Goodell. But if she finds that he did not break it, there's no appeal, and it's over. It's done. He gets no suspension, and nothing happens. So it's what I think is going to end up happening. I think she's going to end up saying that he did break the conduct policy, because it's very vague, and I don't know how they process and what they believe is like the terminology of it all. Like, I don't know it all, but from what I'm understanding is it's very vague and can cover like a wide range of things. So who's going to get suspended? I think it's going to be pretty high what the NFL wants, but not the whole NFL wants. It's not going to be as low as the PA wants, and then they're both going to appeal. And I don't know what happens when they both appeal, because Roger Goodell he's known to do some weird things when it comes to suspensions and stuff. Yeah.
I mean, again, we don't know what happened. We all know that something doesn't feel right here with how many allegations, how many civil suits came out. And whether it's something doesn't feel right because there's a lot of people going for money, or it doesn't feel right because we have someone that's going to represent this organization in the most important position in all of sports that has, had some actions pushed to the side because, again, the NFL is all about, not about second chances, it's about third, fourth, fifth, just almost some behaviors.
Depending on how good you are.
Yeah.
If you're not very good, you get one chance, you're out.
Talent outweighs everything.
Exactly. And it's just not right.
It's not. And people can say, well, that's just the way it is. And if you feel that way, that's fine.
Because I'll tell you guys right now, if Ray Rice was still an elite running back, he would have been back in the league. You know why he didn't get back? Didn't have to make it act like you suck, so whatever, you're done.
Yeah. Again, talent.
Otherwise, he would have come back. Like Greg Hardy, that dude kept coming back, because he was good. But he was a complete piece of crap.
People saw potential and then saw the talent starting to come to fruition, but couldn't keep his head on straight. And, but kept coming back like you just said. And again, people that say, well, that's just how the NFL is, got to get my fantasy football in, got to get my football season in. That's fine. I disagree with you because I don't think we should keep turning a blind eye. Now, we don't know what happened with Deshaun Watson because these are still allegations. He has still claimed innocence. He did settle with 20 of 24. Does that show guilt? I don't know because he's been wanting to prove his innocence, but I'm sure his team and the NFLPA have been telling him to settle so we can get to the suspension because
the Browns are probably pressuring because they want to know what they want to get to the suspension. They want to know how to game plan for the season. So he has the pressure of that, the pressure of just his teams, the fans, everything is on this dude's shoulders. So I'm not going to say that's an admission of guilt. You know who believes that? If you thought he was guilty beforehand, now you're going to say that. And if you don't, you're not. And that's it's not going to change anyone's opinion. It's just going to reinsure your opinion.
Everyone's finding a way to fit in the narrative. The most frustrating part is we don't know.
We'll never know.
We'll never know.
Like I said, him, those girls, and God are the only people that know.
And
there's probably 3 stories that are all different.
Probably.
Yeah, God's the only real story.
Yeah. And there's 2 grand juries that have not indicted him on federal charges. So if they haven't put him on federal charges in a civil suit now, if the NFL in their separate investigation now punishes him for an indefinite suspension that goes at least a year, or they want it to go at least a year, if not more, then what do they know that the judicial system in our country doesn't know?
And
civil's a lot easier to prove because it's really he said, she said. And I think one of the issues that we have is, you're right, the grand juries are like, there's not enough evidence for criminal charges. And my issue, I get, okay, the NFL has a player conduct rule and they want to protect the shield. But I mean, to go and say, okay, we're going to suspend you because these things are alleged. He hasn't been found guilty of anything in the civil court, right? Everything's alleged, but the punish. So what happens? They suspend him for a year. Say they suspend him for a year.
Mm-hmm.
He goes to court. He already settled 20 of the 24. He goes to court the other 4. He's found innocent. What is the NFL going to do? They can't turn back time and say, "Oh, gee, sorry, I guess you should have played because we were wrong."
So none of this is proof. It's all hearsay, like we're all saying.
Yep.
The owners, who should be held higher than the players.
Yep.
Robert Kraft, who was caught on tape, not nowhere near a punishment like that.
That one.
That's proof. They know he did that.
If you think stories have kind of just vanished from NFL and the spotlight in the NFL, the off the field stories, that one vanished quickly. No one wants to bring that up. Dan Snyder is
the biggest scumbag in all of sports, and he owns a team still.
Roger Goodell was in Congress, talking about this. People questioning, why haven't you done it? Why haven't you brought him to...
Of all the things that dude did, you know why the only time there's getting action against him now? It's because he stole money from the other teams.
Yeah.
Told you, they only care about money. And that is all they really care about, is if their image is right, they get more money.
So... there's so many different double standards in the NFL.
My God,
and
it's a joke when it comes to double standards of them.
It's like if you were to look up the word subjective in the dictionary, the NFL office should be the picture that shows up under that word. It's so hard to kind of go through this, and there's people out there that are alleging these acts against them that if it happened, like, they're going through a lot, and it took a lot for them to come forward. Then it gets pushed to the side, or all this different hearsay and back and forth with suspensions, and is he a good person? Is he not a good person? Now the focus on Deshaun Watson, people pick people that have gone through acts like that have actually happened, men or women, especially women. They become, again, they go back into that shell of feeling afraid to come forward and talk about that and make sure that justice is served. And I mean, I don't want to get political, but like what I'm sure women are going through right now in this country already, and what happened this week, I mean, it just feels like the NFL is the epitome of regression instead of progression. It feels like when they progress, they take several steps back all the time because they are so subjective. And
they should be the leaders of this progression.
Yeah, if you're
the most popular sport in this country, you should be the leaders of doing this stuff, what we need to change.
There's a reason why the football I grew up loving most, the sport I grew up loving most, I still love that football, the original football, over American football, not because of what the sport brings. I love watching the sport. I will break it down with anybody, and I try to learn as much as I can. I do play-by-play for it, but soccer will always be above. And there's issues with athletes there. There's issues with athletes in the NBA. Like, if talent is good enough, it'll always win out, and something needs to change around the sports world because sports is a big entity. The NFL is a big entity. Like you just said, Jay, they are the leaders. You got to set the example and not be the example of the opposite side of the coin.